Okay, so picture this with me. You show up at this big international conference, people everywhere from all over, and you get handed the program for the event. And you look down. Every single measurement is metric.
Happens all the time.
Oh, I know. So are you one of those
Okay.
people who's like, got it, you're totally fluent in meters and liters and grams?
Right. Well,
Or are you scrambling for your phone, like how many centimeters are in an inch again?
honestly, it's probably a mix for most of us, especially here in the US. It's like the rest of the world is speaking metric, and we're still over here with our inches and ounces.
Exactly. And that's what we're diving into today. Why? Why is the U.S. measurement system such an outlier? We'll be digging into excerpts from the U.S. measurement system to get to the bottom of this, because it's about way more than just inches versus centimeters. We're talking about history, economics, even a little bit of national identity, all tangled up in how we measure the world around us.
And trust me, it's a more interesting story than you might think.
Way more interesting. So let's get right into it. Now, you might think a lot of people assume this is just like America being rebellious, right? Like anything the British did, we're going to do it our own way.
I can see that.
But it turns out it's less about rebellion and more like we just kind of got stuck with it. It's this
Yeah.
colonial hangover that's been surprisingly hard to shake.
Exactly. Like when America became independent, the metric system was still pretty new on the scene, even in France.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Europe itself took decades to fully adopt it. So it wasn't even a widespread option when America was first figuring things out.
So we inherit the system, and the metric system is off doing its own thing.
Yeah.
But then we get to the 1800s, the Industrial Revolution. Factories are going up left and right. Railroads are being built across the country. That seems like the perfect time to hit reset.
We would think.
Everything's new.
You'd think so. But think about it. Trying to switch measurement systems in the middle of all that, it would have been complete chaos.
Oh, yeah.
All those factories already standardized on inches, feet, pounds.
It would have been like trying to switch the language everyone was speaking overnight.
Totally. Recalibrating all that machinery, retraining workers, redesigning entire industries. The cost would have been astronomical.
At the time.
Exactly.
So the U.S. is already off and running, and the metric system is like, guys?
Pretty much. And that is where the trouble starts. By the time the metric system starts catching on globally, America's already built its entire industrial infrastructure around the customary system.
We're locked in.
Pretty much. It's like we're on this train full speed ahead, and switching tracks seems impossible. Even if, down the line, it might be a smoother ride.
Right, and this is where the government comes in, right?
Hmm.
You'd think at some point someone in Washington would say, all right, enough of this inches and ounces business, we're going metric.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But it's not that straightforward.
Really? So there were attempts to make America go metric.
Oh, there were attempts. Back in 1866, Congress actually passed a law making it legal to use the metric system here.
No way. I had no idea.
Yeah, a lot of people don't. And then again in 1975, they passed the Metric Conversion Act, which basically said, hey, we like the metric system, especially for trade and stuff, but we're not going to make anyone use it.
So like a gentle nudge in the metric direction,
Uh-huh.
but no one's being forced to give up their feet in inches.
Exactly. Very American approach, right? Encourage individual choice rather than forcing a top-down rule. And this gets to a really interesting aspect of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Culture.
Because it's not just about practicality.
Right. Changing a system of measurement, it's not just swapping out some numbers, it's changing how people think, how they do things every day. And for a lot of Americans, the customary system, it's familiar, it's tradition.
It's comfortable, like that old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or, I guess in this case, if we can measure it in inches, why change?
Exactly. And that creates this really interesting paradox because it's not like America totally ignores the metric system. We use it every single day without even realizing it.
That is true. When I buy a bottle of soda, it says milliliters on the label, not ounces.
There you go. Or think about going to the doctor. They're not measuring your blood pressure in pounds per square inch.
It's all millimeters of mercury, yeah. So what does that mean? Are we a metric country or not?
That's the thing about the U.S. and measurements. We're kind of a nation divided. It's like a hybrid system
Mm-hmm.
where daily life is mostly customary units, but then you step into a science lab, a hospital, certain industries.
Bam. It's all metric all the time.
Exactly.
We're like a country with a split personality when it comes to measuring stuff. Does that have consequences, though? Like, does this back and forth actually matter in the grand scheme of things?
It definitely makes things more complicated, that's for sure.
Yeah, more complicated. It was right. I mean, are we talking, like, real consequences? Or just kind of a funny quirk?
Oh no, there are real-world implications. Think about international trade for a second.
Okay.
The U.S. is constantly having to convert between systems, which adds a whole extra layer of cost and complexity when you're trying to do business globally.
Like you're speaking two different languages when you're trying to make a deal.
Exactly. And those communication breakdowns can be costly, especially in industries with really tight tolerances.
Like manufacturing.
Exactly. Or engineering.
Yeah.
Any place where even a tiny error can make a huge difference.
The sticking with the customary system could actually be hurting us economically.
It's something to think about. And then there's the world of science.
Right.
The metric system, it's the global language of science. And being the outlier, well, it makes it harder for American scientists to collaborate internationally or share their findings.
Like trying to publish a research paper when everyone else is using a different citation style?
Exactly. You can still do it, but it's a lot of extra work, and you're always at a slight disadvantage. So we've got these practical issues, but then there's another layer, the cultural impact.
Okay, now you've got me curious. What does our measurement system say about us as a culture?
That's a great question. Some argue that holding on to a system most of the world has moved on from can be seen as a sign of American exceptionalism,
Yeah.
even a resistance to global integration.
Like we're saying, we do things our way, even if it makes things more difficult.
In a nutshell, it's not just about the measurements themselves, it's about what they represent in a larger context.
So it's almost like our measurement system is a reflection of our history, our values, our unique place in the world.
Exactly. It's a fascinating lens through which we can examine American identity. So where do we go from here? It's hard to say. There are strong arguments for fully converting to metric, but the practical challenges and the cultural resistance are real.
Like we've been saying, it's complicated.
Exactly. Maybe the key is to find ways to bridge the gap. Increase metric fluency in schools, encourage industries to use both systems, even just make people more aware of the bigger picture when it comes to measurements.
Because if this deep dive has taught us anything, it's that there's a lot more to this than meets the eye.
I think that's a good place to leave it for today.
It really is.
Yeah.
This has been fascinating. We've gone from inches and centimeters all the way to national identity. It really makes you think.
It does. And who knows, maybe someday we'll have the same conversation and be amazed at how America finally went completely metric.
Maybe. But until then, we'll keep navigating this fascinating world of inches, centimeters, and the enduring impact of how we measure the world around us. Thanks for listening, everybody.